We always think we know something after week one of the college football season. What do we really know? What is real and what is maybe not so real after the dust settles on this past college football weekend, which was a beautiful one. Now, I love the fact you get Thursday, you get Friday, some Saturday action, all the way through Monday. It hurt a little bit last night, not seeing any college football games on the TV screen. But nonetheless, we move on. Week 2 is upon us. We have a big show lined up today for y'all, man. Big show. It is, in fact, the biggest Wednesday of the week. It is Wednesday, September 4th, 2024. We're so glad to have y'all here. If you're new, this is the People's College Football Show, The Hard Count. College football every single day, the way that you want it discussed. No hot takes, no additives, no preservatives. Like I said, massive show lined up today. We got Will Compton from Bussin With The Boys joining the program here in a little bit to break down Nebraska, Colorado, get his thoughts on Tennessee, talk about Florida State. Like we specialize on that conversation on Nebraska, Colorado, but I mean, he gives us his takes all across the board in the great landscape of college football. Also, playoff picture tiers. All right, as we sit here right now, we're starting to get a gauge for who may be feeling pretty good about their playoff chances. Hint, hint, wink, wink, Notre Dame, I think, should feel real good right now. Maybe who's on the outside looking in, who's living in bubble central right now. And then outside of that, maybe who's waitlisted when it comes to making that 12-team playoff. Then, of course, we check in on the good folks in G5 country because, yep, they'll get a playoff spot this year. They will have someone more than likely in the 12 seed. So we'll unpack that together. And then also got a lot of stuff on Twitter from y'all saying, hey, you were talking all that mess around Oregon being so good and you felt great about them. They didn't look that great against Idaho. You selling any Oregon stock? Spoiler alert, no, not selling any of my Oregon stock. However, if you're selling yours, I'm more than happy to purchase it because I think there was a major overreaction on Oregon showing against Idaho. So we'll unpack that together, unpack the issues, quote unquote, and what's going on in Eugene and the outlook for them the rest of 2024. Again, so glad to have y'all here, man. It is just a beautiful thing that we're talking about actual college football games right now. We're not talking about hypotheticals. We're not ranking something arbitrarily. We're actually talking about college football games being played. That is a beautiful thing. If you're new to the show, again, subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on podcast, we appreciate you. Go ahead and subscribe to the feed there, whether it be Apple, whether it be Spotify. However you get your podcast, you can find us there, and we appreciate you locking in with us on this beautiful thing that is the world of college football. Let's jump into this. We got Will Compton here in a few minutes. Let's start here, though. Week 1, a lot of times is kind of a sleight of hand. Like, remember a couple of years ago, Anthony Richardson goes off in the swamp. They beat a good Utah team, and a lot of folks are saying, all right, like, hey, is Florida going to contend for the SEC? And then they end up winning 6 football games. We look at that Utah team, we're like, well, hey, what's going on out there in Salt Lake City? Like, are they going to be? They went out and won the Pac-12, and they're more than fine. So what is real and what is maybe not real from week 1? I'll start with what I believe is real. Nico Iamaleava. I know it was Chattanooga. I understand it was the Mocs. I understand they're going to have to play Alabama and Georgia, but like what you saw from Nico Iamaleava in that first game, going for 300-plus yards, his first half, not the first game, this first half of his college career as the guy in Knoxville, not counting the bowl game. That was real. Like that was an ultimately a laser convention. And the reason why I feel so good about that being real, yes, he got a lot of off coverage, and yes, Chattanooga is nowhere near the competition level he's going to see, but the poise and the definitive way you saw him play the game, that's going to translate. Now, I'm not telling you he's winning the Heisman Trophy based off one game, but I am saying you can trust what you saw in that game. He's going to be a big-time player for them. It looks like the light bulb is pretty much on. We'll get a great litmus test for him against NC State this upcoming week, but I'm just telling you, if you're a Tennessee fan, get excited about Nico. You probably don't need me to tell you that, but I'm just saying what you saw in that game, it was real, regardless of the competition level. Here's what's not real. A lot of folks now trying to get rid of their Clemson stock. Oh, man, they got drugged by Georgia, man, 34-3. The offense couldn't move the ball. What are we doing? Let's pump the brakes here. Much like Tennessee is superior to Chattanooga, Georgia is a pretty tough litmus test when you talk about Clemson. Now, I probably wouldn't have said it the way that I just said it. I don't think Chattanooga is the equivalent of what Clemson is versus Tennessee and Georgia, but you hear what I'm saying. Clemson, I thought, played really well that first half of the game. I think they made a point that front seven, even with the youth they have up there, they're going to be, I think, a problem for the rest of the ACC. Look at the rest of their schedule, too. Like, no Miami on there, That Florida State game looks a lot more winnable. It's hard to get a great gauge for the offense in that first game. They definitely need some of those young bucks from a TJ Moore to step up. They need a Bryant Wesco to step up a little bit for them on the outside. We'll see how they manage them going forward. I'm just saying, I don't think you should just write off Clemson because they got beat by Georgia. I've said it for a long time. I think Georgia is on another planet this year. That's just how I feel about them. They showed that in that game. But Clemson showing some good things, I think, in that first game. I think they'll be a force in the ACC. Here's something that's real, too. Notre Dame. Notre Dame is going to be a problem this year in college football. And they're going to say, well, Texas A&M, we don't know what they are. Connor Wegman doesn't really look that great, and it was just the first game and the skill players. I understand all of that. To me, I look at Notre Dame. I see a salty team. I see a team full of adults, both like metaphorically with how they carry themselves, and then literally with 7 grad students starting on defense. To walk into College Station and to have zero flinch, Riley Leonard included. I mean, that's a guy who's gotten his first start at Notre Dame, not getting much of spring football, new OC, new pieces on the perimeter. I love everything about Notre Dame. And you look at the schedule for them the rest of the way, like they don't have a difficult gauntlet to run necessarily to make the college football playoff. Now, they still have some tricky opponents on there. Florida State, again, not to dunk on the Noles, but that game looks a lot more winnable than it did a few weeks ago. You got to go and play USC, and that game looks a little bit tougher than it did a few weeks ago. But at the end of the day, again, I think 10-2 Notre Dame gets in the college football playoff. More on them in a little bit. They found a way to win ugly on the road. We said it on our Sunday reaction, man. Sometimes it's better to be gritty than pretty. And I think Notre Dame was gritty, and I think that was the real deal from them in College Station. Here's something that's an overreaction that's not real. A lot of people saying, man, LSU only scored 20 points on offense against a USC defense that we have come to make fun of in the college football public. One, I think USC's defense has proven they are going to be better this year, so that's one. Two, LSU offensively has too many playmakers and are too well coached to have the result they had this past Sunday. Okay, like they're not going to have 3 drives inside the 15 and come away with 6 points. It's just not going to happen. The concern going into that game, if you're an LSU fan offensively, was like, hey, Garrett Nussmeier, man, we know he likes to push the ball deep. Is he going to take care of the football? There was that fluky interception at the very end of the game, but for the most part, man, you saw him make good decisions. You saw him on time, in rhythm. He's got a new play caller in Joe Sloan. I think Kyron Lacey has very much so made a case he's got next as the great wide receiver at LSU. Like, I love the pieces at LSU. I would be wildly surprised if we saw the offense average anything below 30 to 35 points a game this year. I really believe that. I think they're stacked. I love the offensive line. I think, if anything, this game will hopefully propel them going forward. And the LSU offense is more than fine. Do not listen to anybody telling you otherwise, all right? Cam Ward now. He is the real deal now. Him and Miami are the real deal. And I think there is still something to be said for, okay, well, you have to do it consistently. You still have to handle success correctly. This is a different spot for this team, given where they are in the Mario Cristobal regime. But I think a lot of people will be quick to say, well, it was Florida, relax, calm down. We don't know what the Gators are. In fact, a lot of people would say the opposite. We don't think Florida's all that good. Here's what I would say. Say what you want about Florida. I know what I saw from Cam Ward. I know what I saw from that team, and I know what I saw when it came to being in a difficult environment in the swamp, something that yours truly was harping on all week long, saying that was going to make the difference, that was going to be something he had never seen before. And he walked out there and was, again, I said it yesterday, I'll say it again. He looked like he was playing football at one of his buddies' barbecues. Like, he was just so calm, so poised. And if you're going to look calm and poised in your first start ever, in one of the most difficult environments to play in college football, I got no reservations about Miami going forward. That roster is now at a place where Mario Cristobal has been pushing it to for some time. You have a quarterback to get it done. I know what I saw. Miami, for my money, they're the real deal. They're a college football playoff team. And the schedule, I think, indicates as much. Here's one more thing that's not real, an overreaction. Again, we're going to get on this a little bit later on in the show. People are telling you that Oregon is fraudulent. I'm like, based on what? Based on the fact that they beat Idaho by 10 points, that's the hill you're willing to die on? I understand you could look at the final score and say, it shouldn't be that close. That's true. That's 100% true. Oregon, I think a lot of people would tell you they did not execute or play complimentary enough football to have their best day that day. But I look at the things that would make me concerned if I'm watching a team in week 1. And that is the trenches. Hey, are we getting pushed off the ball? Do we look like a lackluster organization? Not at all. They held Idaho to like 40-some-odd rush yards. Hey, is our quarterback, did we miss on the quarterback? Because we got him through the portal, and honestly, we're putting a good amount of our college football playoff aspirations on the shoulders of number 8, Dylan Gabriel. No, he was dialed in. He played great. So there were some things that didn't break their way, some things that they, quite frankly, have to do a better job at. But there was no breakdown defensively. There was no breakdown offensively. The roster, they're going to be fine. If someone's selling you Oregon stock, probably at a discounted rate, I would take that and take as much of it as I can, shake their hand as they walk away. Just a foolish move by them. They play Boise State this week. Does Oregon? Be a good test. Be very interesting to see how they respond to a bit of a tough week for Oregon the week before against Idaho. But I can't wait to see how they respond, man, because, again, that roster is as good as any in college football. You probably put them in that conversation with an Ohio State and a Georgia when it comes to the talent level right now. And that's saying something. So, again, it's week 1. We appreciate the fact that we get to react to this, but it's one data point. One data point, sometimes you draw conclusions that aren't always accurate, all right? So let's do our best to keep a level head together. Those are things that I believe are both real and not real based on this past weekend. So one other thing that's real now, PrizePicks is the best way to squeeze all of the juice you can out of every single college football Saturday. If you use code HARDCOUNT when you play, get yourself play $5 of lineups, get yourself $50 in promo funds. PrizePicks, if you don't know what that is, daily fantasy, made simple, made easy, very comprehensive, easy to withdraw your money, safe to use. You just put 2 or more player projections together on their stats. We play exclusively college football on this show. Pick the more or less on those stats. You're off to the races. Right now, during the month of September, they've got a sweet deal around Caleb Williams. So you pair your Caleb Williams square with some college football squares, pick the more or less on those, you're off to the races. Again, prizepicks.com, code HARDCOUNT, $5 in lineups. You get $50 in promo funds. Whether you win or lose on that lineup of $5, get yourself $50 in promo funds to play with. So yesterday we had just an absolute blast having Bussin With The Boys' very own Will Compton in studio, chopped it up on everything from Nebraska, Colorado, which, of course, Will Compton, essentially the mayor of Nebraska football. He's going to be at that game, got his take on the game, got his keys to the game, if you will, and also picked his brain on everything from Tennessee to Oregon to Florida State and just overall his takeaways on the early action we've seen across the college football landscape. So great conversation. Excited for y'all to see this. Without further ado, here's Will Compton. Now joined by Bussin With The Boys' very own Nebraska GOAT, Will Compton. Will, this is awesome to have you here, man. We had you at the Elite Series in Nashville. We're here at the home studio in Nashville, man. Glad to have you here, brother.
Dude, I am stoked to be here. One, because that event in Nashville for all the big recruits, there's a cornerback that's committed to Ohio State. I'm forgetting his name right now.
Naeem Offord?
Maybe.
Or Devin Sanchez? One
Devin,
of those two? Yeah.
Devin.
Yeah.
I got to meet him when we went out to the Houston Texans training camp, and he came up. He's like, hey, I was there when you were at the On3 event. It fired me up, and that he remembered that and all that. But I'm stoked to be here, and because, we whooped UTEP last weekend. We look kind of salty right now.
It's a big one this week, man. It's a big one this week.
It's a massive one this week. I'm doing my best for a slow burn, temper expectations, but there is a part of me that thinks we can steamroll this team if we just keep our head straight. We keep our head on a swivel. We have no fear against Travis Hunter, Horn, Shadur. Because outside of them, I think there's another receiver they got. Outside of them, I feel good. I like us.
Yeah, they got some dudes. And that was one of the big reasons why we're fired up to have you in studio is, like, the magnitude of this game, primetime, NBC, in Lincoln. Here's a good place to start. Will you be on the Jumbotron for the hype video again this week? Is that happening? Okay.
I will. That's confirmed. That's all season long for home games.
No way.
Nebraska reached out and they were like, hey, we were talking it over, and we talked with Coach Rule, and would you be interested in doing hype videos for the Husker home games this year?
Let's go.
And my response was, I was born for an opportunity like this. And I said, absolutely, I'll do it. And I'm like, is this going to be played, before the tunnel walk? Is it going to be like, is it for the players? Is it for the fans? And they're like, the tunnel walk's going to happen. The band's going to play. Then we're going to do some sound off. Your video's going to play, and then the ball's going to get kicked off. And, bro, the chills I got down my spine to fire up Husker Nation. And everybody knows how I feel about the Huskers. I loved playing there. I loved going to school there. Maybe the best decision I've ever made, and I am right now thinking about marrying my wife as well. And yeah, bro, I'm so stoked, man. I love the Huskers, and again, we're 1-0 right now. We looked good against a salty UTEP team.
The Miners.
Yeah, the Miners. 11 transfers from Austin P. You know you're going to get that team's best ball
100%.
in week 1.
100%.
So knowing that we handled them 40-7, I was juiced up. And just to see how we played.
Yeah.
See how the boys played, how the players played. I'm sure you have. Instead of me rambling, I'll let you go ahead and ask the questions.
No, I love it. Well, that's where I want to start, because like Raiola, for me, I'm thinking like this is the game changer for Nebraska. Like, great defense, awesome. Okay, run the ball effectively the last couple of years, awesome. Last year especially, a lot of dudes back. Dude, he looks so good against UTEP. Again, it's UTEP, so like you're trying to temper expectations, but like, just what was your assessment of him first day out?
Loved it. My hands, like I was pitting, I was sweating before the game started. Taylor had the money line on Vandy.
Okay.
We were watching the game before we went down to the tailgate at Texas A&M. Obviously, Nebraska kicked off at 2:30, but Taylor had the money line for Vandy. So they were in a little barn burner there at the end. But I was like, hey, fellas, keep it on that game. Don't, because everybody was like, Will wants to watch the Huskers, blah, blah, blah. But I got it pulled up on my iPhone with YouTube TV. And no free shout-outs, YouTube TV.
There you go.
But I'm sitting there sweating, like, nervous, bro. Like, it's finally here. I can't wait to see how Dylan does. And obviously the rest of the team, they returned a lot of guys on defense. And just excited, man. But I'm telling you, and maybe you'll get this, you played. And it's a sleeper kind of assessment. However, I think if you know and you've been in the locker room, you can tell how massive this was. I don't know how much of the game you watched. Yeah. But when Dylan was walking out of the tunnel walk and getting into it with the fans, like, I don't know how you were, but even as a veteran in the league, like when I'm going out for my first start or I'm getting an opportunity, or when I was playing as a freshman or sophomore, junior, senior year at Nebraska, there's so many, like, you're in such a fight or flight response going out to the field because, you feel like you're insanely prepared, but you're thinking of every situation possible. But to have the poise, I guess, and the swagger to get involved with the crowd, and this kid is 19.
Yes.
I'm thinking to myself, hey, I hope this isn't like some arrogant overconfidence and he lays it up, but I love just seeing him come out of the tunnel walk.
100%.
Like, do you know what I'm saying?
I know exactly. So the thing for me is, like, I played in a conference where I'm playing in front of like 200 people, and like walking out, I'm still like dialed in. You're kind of have tunnel vision on, and so to be in a sold-out Memorial Stadium, and he's like, yeah, let's go. Like, first start. It's not like he's like some veteran walking out.
Around seniors and upperclassmen. Like, you're around a different type of caliber of, in that point in time, men in your eyes.
Sure, 100%.
And watching him go out, he had a big throw, a great throw downfield where I think Isaiah, number 18, kind of dove and missed it. He could have came down with it. But you see a great throw like that, and for him to go back to him throughout the game and just trust his arm deep, bro. Like, you're not used to seeing deep plays or big plays like that with Nebraska, or you haven't for some time. And just seeing that, bro, and him trusting it and watching the offensive line move people again, I know it was UTEP. But when you've watched the Huskers in recent years, but the mentality that this team seemed to have on Saturday, again, leaning on guys, moving the line of scrimmage. There were 4 running backs with at least 6 carries, and they averaged over 4 yards per carry. Like, they were running through people's faces to go along with Dylan. And obviously, we're, that 3rd and 11 where he looks Mahomes-esque. I know he loves Mahomes, and shout out Patrick. But just to see that, and also the receivers go up and play to make plays versus – dropping one in the basket, like going up when they were like in the red zone and he throws that touchdown pass. And I think it was number 4, goes up
Banks,
Banks goes up and grabs it, and it's his ball. And then again, the black shirts, we got beat on one route. That kid was quick. That actually makes me, it's like, okay, you can't get a matchup like that on somebody like a Travis Hunter because he can do the same thing. But making plays, man, picking it off the defensive line. You got Polar Bear, you got Ty. Like, those guys are nasty, man. And I'm so juiced. I'm so juiced because I feel like we do have a good product this year.
It felt like, I think it was, he had a big completion. I want to say it was Lloyd. Breaks off a big gain, and you're like, okay, here we go. We're in the red zone. I think it was offensive pass interference, bring it back, 2nd and 30. And, like, 2nd and 30 a year ago is like, okay, so we're punting here in a minute. And then he just, like, two throws, and then, like, okay, scoring drive. Like, now we're playing a different kind of ball.
Yes,
so,
bro.
like, the it factor he has, to your point, massive game changer. Massive game changer.
Even the freshman, this freshman receiver, I can't remember his name, but I think he's little number 17, or he's like he's in the teens.
Okay.
But him, like, you can tell he's going to get utilized, kind of like that little scrappy slot player where you get jet sweeps. He's somebody who's fast.
Yeah.
A returner.
Jalen Lloyd, maybe?
I don't know. I don't think it's Jalen Lloyd, because he's where did Jalen came from?
He's a redshirt freshman, or maybe not a redshirt, but he's a second-year player.
Yeah. But this is a freshman, and again, he had a big play, and he gets up with some swag about him. It just, I don't know. You can see the attitude, and it's awesome to see, because again, you've watched Nebraska over the last decade. The boys are not coming out swinging like that, having that type of confidence. When the running back fumbles the ball going into the goal line, and we eventually get a safety, but a play like that happens, it's more of a snowball effect versus, hey, we just had a great drive. Defense, we need you to bail us out.
Yes, 100%.
You're not playing complimentary football like that. It's kind of like, oh, here we go again.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just, again, I know week 1, UTEP, we got a good test this weekend, but it feels different this year.
But here's the thing, like, I said this throughout, like, spring football, fall camp, going into week 1, like, as long as you have a 0 in the loss column, like, drink all the Kool-Aid you can. Like enjoy the heck out of it, because who knows what happens over the course of a long season. Like, live in the moment, undefeated in the moment. Like, okay, let's go. Huge game we've talked about, Colorado, Nebraska. What are you watching, like, matchup-wise, when it comes to how Nebraska can potentially get out of this one with a dub?
Again, I feel like, you want to respect the game. You want to respect the team, because no matter what, you got to go out there and play on Saturday. But I feel like what you saw – again, your boy, I was on it. North Dakota State plus 10 last week. I was like, guys, do not sleep on this ball club. Like, this is – those boys up north in Dakota, South Dakota State, those guys, like, they can play some ball. Mm-hmm. And it's like their Super Bowl to come out here and beat Colorado in front of their home crowd. And I feel like there's vulnerabilities on Colorado's side defensively that, again, it's like you can take them by – you see Dylan throwing it. You see us being able to run the football. Like, as long as you play complimentary football, like – I don't know. I think we can beat their.
It's there.
I think it's there. We got to be careful getting in bad matchups with. Again, they have a lot of speed on offense.
Sure.
Their offensive line seems to still have some holes where guys are getting after Shadur, but Shadur is so poised, and he's a very good quarterback, and he never seems to blink. Duke can throw it as he's getting hit to where he doesn't even get his full arm and still seems to make an unbelievable throw.
Stupid.
Like
trick shots out there.
Yeah, so the black shirts still have their work cut out for them, but again, I think they're very hungry for this game, because I think everybody remembers the taste in their mouth leaving Boulder last year.
Mm-hmm. And as a guy who played defensive football, like, is that something where you try and heat up a Shadur Sanders, like you meant? Is that something where you're like, hey, let's keep it all in front of us? Like, what is the angle in your mind defensively to try and stop a team with that much talent and that much explosivity on offense?
You can't be predictable in the playing zone and keep it in front of you. But to me, the biggest team key, like if you're going Mike Vrabel team keys for defense this week, the very first one is keeping the ball in front of you but eliminating X plays, because I think that's where Colorado can hurt you. When they spread you out and they get running and guys don't put hands on anybody, if they're free to run, they do a really good job. So I think you got to get them out of their rhythm. You got to reroute them. You got to put your hands on guys. You got to get Shadur going through his progressions, because again, like you can do what you can, but you ultimately just have to contain Shadur. You got to blitz when you feel like, situationally, Coach White, he's going to know when to pressure and when not to. But I think on the back end, it's guys, keep the ball in front of you and make them earn every yard, because it's a team that is ready for a track meet. We can't give them one.
Sure. What is an X play? I'm not familiar with what that means.
An explosive play.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Shorten it down a
right,
little bit.
Right. The offense gets behind you, a receiver gets behind you, but ultimately you give up an explosive play based on one one mishap, guys not fishing to the football. Somebody
Gotcha.
might get beat on a slant route that ends up turning into a touchdown. So it's gap integrity, all of those things to where, again, they're going to catch a lot of – they're gonna run their offense. They're still going to be good offensively, but it's like, hey, make them make them drive the entirety of the field. Don't let them get away with taking a slant. Or like you saw Travis on his first touchdown against North Dakota State where he just hooks up for a hitch route and takes it all the way to the house. It's like things like that, you can't allow those things to happen.
Interesting. Okay, so making them earn it, a huge key to the game, obviously. Speaking of like the final result in this game, I wasn't going to ask you for your pick because I think we know where you fall there.
We all know where
Do
I'm
they
at.
cover? Great teams win, or good teams win, great teams cover.
Yeah.
Where do you fall there?
I think so. I mean, that's where I'm going to put my money this weekend.
Let's go.
I'm not going to say same team because you just don't know how to measure up a UTEP. It's awesome I'm getting to even talk like that this year. But the way we were able to run the football, throw it off play action, take shots, have good accuracy. Dylan even took a shot to the face last week where his helmet comes off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, if we're doing those things, and I trust in Tony White and his defensive philosophy, like they're a very good team defensively, and they returned a lot of guys. They got a nasty line of scrimmage. So again, it's like if we're playing our best ball, we should handle this team. I'm telling you, we should handle this team.
Keeping Tony White too as the DC,
Big.
he probably could have gone and been a head coach somewhere.
100%.
For being real, like. It might have been the biggest keep of the op. I mean, the portal is the portal, but like keeping him as a DC,
yeah,
absolutely.
And guys
huge.
seem to love him. Guys seem to love playing for him, and it's like when you have that and you have players wanting to be successful for their coach, like that's you got a team that has their head in the right spot,
dialed in.
Yeah.
Well, I know you were in College Station this past weekend.
Yeah.
Did you get a chance to like check out anything throughout week one? I guess overall takeaways from week one from what you were able to see.
Yeah, Miami looks like a wagon. I mean, Cam Ward looks insane. First of all, him jogging into a walk, going into that first down, that's psychotic. I love the swagger, but Jesus Christ. Like, we need you. I think that was the first quarter, too. I think it was early in the game, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like the first drive. We're like, they're bringing pressure. He gets out, and I'm like, oh, something's like actually wrong with how he processes pressure of the moment. He just was chill as all can be, and I was like, it's going to be a long day.
Love Miami. USC showed some saltiness against LSU.
Yeah.
I think you need to blow up Florida's program. That sucks for them and that fan base because they have a team that university deserves a team that they should be proud of, and they are far from that. Seeing 70 on that interception, just basically give up on the play.
Yeah.
Like that's as bad as it gets. I don't think you should sell your stock on Oregon.
I was going to ask you, yeah, okay.
I think they just had a tough showing operationally. If you watch that game, they were moving the ball just fine. Not like an explosive, again, track meet offense like sometimes you're used to seeing with them, but they were moving the ball just fine. I think they got in a situation, you miss a field goal to go up 10-0, so you could have had an opportunity to be up 17-0, driving at the end of the half. They get a strip sack going into 2-minute offense. They get a strip sack where who are they playing again? Idaho,
yep.
Idaho strip sacks them when they're only up 14-0. Idaho has a shot to score. Defense did a phenomenal job bowing up when they needed to, keeping them out of the end zone. And then you come out in the second half, they just came out in the second half flat. And then they ultimately took over their defense. I think each corner had a pick, but their defense played really well. But, again, I don't feel like that's a stock you should sell with Oregon. I think that's just one you might see and think, oh, Oregon this year, Michigan this year. I think Michigan was kind of a different story than Oregon.
Sure.
I think they kind of looked a little bit more confusing on offense, like they don't know who they want to be at all. Defensively, they obviously showed up. Will Johnson made a massive play, which was amazing to see at the end of the game. But Oregon was one to where I ended up – that was a game I went and watched the replay because I'm sitting there. Number one, I got to interview Dan Lanning in the offseason, and he's a Missouri boy, so he's like one of my guys. And I'm thinking, what the hell happened against Idaho? So I watched that game, and, again, that is not a team. If anything, you take them to cover against Boise State because I know that entire week – that showing against Idaho is going to feel, it has felt like a loss, and they're going to be pissed off going to Boise State.
Those last 2 drives, it felt like they just flipped the on switch.
Yeah.
There was like, oh, this is the Oregon team that we had heard about all offseason.
Yeah.
This is like, damn, okay, cool. They're going to play 2 minutes of football and win the game. Okay, good. Good
Yes.
to know. You mentioned Florida. Florida State last night, not sure how much you got to catch of it. It had a very similar vibe to like horrible body language, can't stop anybody against the run. And like, I'm sure there's a lot more to that than what meets the eye from someone like me on the outside looking in. Did you have any takeaway there? I see guys doing palms up. I mean, we're just like,
palms
what's
up,
going
that's
on?
bad ball. Never
ball.
want to do palms up, even though if you know somebody made a mistake. Just teammate, being a good teammate, you don't want to ever be palms up, which I've done a few times, and you get checked like in film. If the good teams will check you in film, like, Comp, what are you doing palms up for? But it sucks, man. My old defensive coordinator at Nebraska, John Papuchis, he's a special teams coordinator for Florida State. Got to, again, go to Florida State for our spring tour and sit down with Coach Norvell. And guys and philosophies that you're like, you root for. So it kind of sucks seeing the product that they've had on the field the last 2 games. And it just seems like ever since they got taken out of the college football playoff, or the playoff last year, the 14 playoff, like they've just like packed it in.
Yeah.
And I know this is a different team than last year. Like they lost a lot of guys, and a lot of guys are in the NFL now. But it seems like they missed on the quarterback.
Yeah, a little bit. Does,
I mean,
yeah.
and I hate to say that because we got to sit down with DJ too, and he's an awesome kid. And you just know when you're having a game like that, and now it's 2 weeks in a row, I'm curious like where his mental is and everything else, because you know that can kind of snowball and really get on top of you, especially with the way the outside world talks these days.
Oh, I mean, Twitter is just merciless.
Yeah.
People behind a logo as their profile picture just, I mean, spouting off takes, and you're like, golly.
There's no mercy out
None
there on
at
the Twitter
all.
streets. But if you're a player, you got to stay off X these days.
100%.
Have to.
And I mean, the thing, too, is I'm like, okay, yeah, DJU's, missing throws he's got to hit. And part of me is also like, if I'm a Florida State fan, it was never supposed to be about it was supposed to be about this defensive line that was supposed to be incredible. We're allowing 200 yards a game on the ground, like offensively.
Right.
We're running for 20 yards. Like, what is – so I guess there's – anytime you're the quarterback, you're going to get your fair share of blame. But then I'm also like, hey, this equation isn't exactly what I thought we signed up for
Right.
if we're a Florida State fan. So the whole thing is bizarre. Whole thing is bizarre.
I know, man. I think, they're in a bad spot.
Bad spot.
They're in a bad spot to where everybody's got to take a long, hard look in the mirror right now, and you never want to be in that spot in the locker room right after week 2.
Yeah, not great. Well,
or week 1 for them, but
yeah, I guess week 1, 2 game, 100%. First game on U.S. soil.
Yeah.
Well, let's, you know what I'm saying? Let's flip the script a little bit here. You had a national championship pick out for the Tennessee Vols. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
You're sticking with that pick. I know we were 1 weekend. Is that still the?
Yeah, Taylor and I, we had to pick 2 different teams.
Couldn't be Nebraska or Michigan.
Couldn't be
correct?
Nebraska or Michigan. In my brain, I was going to go Oregon or Tennessee, depending on who Taylor picked.
Okay.
Taylor went Oregon, which I love that pick. I like Tennessee.
Dude, Nico looked good. Any thoughts on him after the first
good.
week?
I found myself again. I couldn't watch that game. They murdered Chattanooga.
Yeah, you didn't miss much.
But I find myself. I think I was listening to you talk about Nico, and then you find a related search. I'm watching Aaron Murray just break down his each throw for like 25 minutes, and dude, they got a weapon. I feel like with Tennessee, and it's all going to come down to defense. It's all going to come down to defense when they start playing these. You got Georgia. You got Alabama. Looks nasty. And they got a good shot. Chip Kelly at Ohio State, I think, is going to be something to monitor all year long because the talent that they have on that team with an offensive mind like that and Coach Hartline. But, yeah, I like my Tennessee pick. Number 1, we're in Nashville, so we're in Tennessee. I'm GBO after GBR. Chancellor Dondi Plowman. She was head of business at Nebraska when I was there, so I'm close with her. Oh, cool. So I do root for Tennessee. I like where they're at, and I think they're a lot better than what I thought that they would be, especially Nico.
Dude, he was spraying it around the yard.
Yes.
Like seeing – and I guess like –
But again, a lot of off coverage.
Sure. Yeah.
Based on Aaron's breakdown.
For sure.
Which is true, but just having an accurate passer is massive for that offense because it is. It's just they spread you out and throw it around.
And similar to Dylan, like speaking of like composure and poise, my thought is like, okay, if I'm Nico, my first start as the guy, we got Chattanooga, like I'm trying to just push it deep or try to make a big play. And like with that off coverage, like Just kind of took what they gave him. There was no poor decisions that he's making.
No urgency to be like, all right, I need a big play right now. Yeah, which is a great thought. And that is what you want to see. That's what you want to see with Nico being young too.
So far, so good. Well, we got a massive one in week 2. I know your co-host Taylor Lewan obviously went to Michigan.
Oh, you're making me pick Michigan, Texas?
Oh, I mean, you don't have to give a pick per se. I mean, do you have a take overall on the game? You don't have to give a pick if you don't want to, but do you have a take on that game?
If I'm a Michigan fan, I'm nervous about Texas coming in. You know, they had a team, they had a great team last year, and all they've done is add to it. Mm-hmm. Quinn looked good, Manning looked good. They got an O-line that's ready to move you. Yeah, I think that's going to be an incredible game, man. I'm picking Michigan because I got to ride with my boy.
Let's go.
But I don't feel good about it. You know what I mean? Like, we got a doubleheader coming up Saturday. We treat ourselves once a year to where we go private, so that way we can hit a couple spots.
Let's go. No way.
We're flying from Nashville to Ann Arbor. Probably hit, as much as we can until we have to make the flight from Ann Arbor to Lincoln, and then we're going, driving in from Lincoln, going right to the stadium. Landing in Lincoln about 4:30. Hit double headers on the 2 headliners this weekend, in my opinion.
That's huge. Are y'all doing anything on the field? Are you leading the boys out of the tunnel? And
I don't think so. Okay. I don't think so. I'll get they treat your boy well. I'll get the access. I'll get the crowd hype. Amazing. Probably watch my hype video on the jumbotron. But dude, it's going to be an electric atmosphere.
That's so awesome.
You been to a Husker game?
We got our producer River Bailey off.
Has he been to a Husker game?
I don't think so. You said no Nebraska, no Nick Brake, no Nebraska for him. I know our other producer Trey Annity been to Omaha.
Has Trey been to a Nebraska game?
I don't believe he has.
Yeah.
So we got to make that. That's on the bucket list.
Night game,
100%.
Week 2, Colorado. We haven't beat Colorado. When we play Colorado, it will have been 5,034 days.
But who's counting?
Right now it's 5,030.
Let's go.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
They're locked.
Yeah.
They're locked. Is there any – I don't want to, beat this to death. I don't want to keep you too long, but,
Rule said, no, we want Nebraska nice on Sunday.
I saw that. I saw that on Twitter. Yeah, I saw that. Is that, so is Nebraska nice, code for don't be nice? Or what,
he
what
said
is Nebraska
Sunday,
nice
not Saturday.
Sunday. Okay.
Yeah, Nebraska's fan base is known for being the nice fan base.
Sure.
Hey, great game out there. Hope you stay healthy. Have a great rest of the season, whether you win, lose, whatever. It's kind of throws you off by how nice Nebraska can be.
Okay.
But
it's Sunday, not Saturday.
Yeah, that's
not happening
on Sunday.
It's not happening
I think
on
it's going
Saturday.
to be pretty hostile on Saturday night.
Let's go.
And I think it's going to be incredible. Dion on the other sideline.
Oh my gosh. It'll be the most watched game that day, I think, with Michigan and Texas being in the new, it'll be the most watched game.
My boy Colt McCoy calling it.
Yeah, how about that? That'll
Fired
be cool.
up for him. I got to shoot him a text about how many. What can I get at? What do you need for you to say my name on the broadcast?
Mention the hype video.
Yeah.
That's electric. Well, I'll leave you with this, man. You just mentioned what your Saturday plans are. Doubleheader, hitting Michigan, hitting Lincoln, Nebraska. Do you have a typical college football Saturday routine that gets you in the mood, gets the juice flowing? Okay.
Not yet.
Still workshopping it.
You kind of wake up and you're just ready to go. You know what I mean?
Loaded,
If I'm home, if I am at my house and we don't have nothing going on that weekend, which I love and cherish, we'll wake up, hit the farmer's market, hit a coffee shop. We love what is it?
Alabaster and Onyx.
Yes.
Onyx Alabaster.
Onyx and Alabaster.
It's
a good coffee shop.
Good spot.
And then we'll hit the Franklin Farmer's Market, and then we'll I'll be checking the watch hey, it's time.
Yeah. It's go mode.
And if it's a later game, I'll try to maybe get a run in because I'm just too.
The juices flowing.
The juices are way my emotions are way too high. I'm almost anxious. You know what I mean? I gotta run a little bit, get some sweat going. But that would be my routine. Now when we're traveling and everything else, it's just figuring out our strategy around when Nebraska and Michigan play. Hey, are we gonna get it out here? How can we get it? Stuff like that.
Let's go.
But
awesome. Well, dude, I'm fired up to watch your hype video. That's going to be incredible. I'm sure that'll make its way around the socials. But
I got a little something this week.
I can't wait. Awesome.
Let's
go,
But
man.
I'm fired up, man.
Let's
Thanks
go.
for having me, bro.
Dude, Will Compton, best in the business, man. Appreciate you stopping by. Again, Will Compton, man. Awesome to have him in the studio. Just a good human being. It was awesome getting to chop it up with him before and after. And, guy obviously loves college football, loves his Huskers. So we appreciate him making some time to talk some ball with us here, man. A lot of good stuff there. So – with the way the college football playoff is working right now, again, if you're being dropped into this thing and you're like, wait, there's 4 teams, right? No, there's 12 teams. There's 12 teams. And so with that being the case now, there is, I think, different tiers we have to look at for different teams across the college football landscape to keep a good gauge on where we're going to end up here on Selection Sunday. These are not college football playoff rankings, rather college football playoff picture tiers. Now, if you want our rankings, that's already on the channel. We do that every single Sunday. We go 1 through 11, and then we give you our 12, our G5 seed, if you will, for that 12th spot. That's kind of the college football playoff rankings for us. I want us to go through these tiers together. We got 3 tiers, and then we check in on the party that is the G5 sector of college football. The 3 tiers are, 1, the playoff penthouse. All right, so those are the teams that just transparently we feel real good about right now. We feel like they're more than likely going to be there when Selection Sunday rolls around as a college football playoff team. Now, this is going to change a lot throughout the course of the season. This week, this is the most stacked I have that tier, all right? They're the most teams I believe we'll have throughout the course of the entire season in that tier post-week 1. The second tier is going to be Bubble Central. Those are the teams that are like, I could see them being 10-2, could see them 9-3. It's been 1 week. There are undefeated teams in Bubble Central right now, okay? Doesn't mean they're going to stay there. They could absolutely play their way out of there. But right now, those are the teams that were like, okay, are they going to find their way into the college football playoff? More than likely as an at-large bid. That's the second tier. Now, the third tier is means you're waitlisted. So it's better than not being in any of the tiers at all. But waitlisted is like, hey, you probably, you could still get in, but you maybe need some help. You maybe need to, kind of put it together here pretty quick, fast, and in a hurry. Teams that we wouldn't be surprised if they found their way in, but right now, going to go ahead and put them as waitlisted. And then, of course, that last sector we'll talk about, that last tier is our friends in G5 country, man, and they're making some noise. Big week for the folks in G5 this week, just so we're all on the same page here. So let's start here. Playoff penthouse. Again, these are the teams we feel real good about. We think these are teams that are more than likely going to be in that college football playoff arena on Selection Sunday. I'll say it again. This is the most stacked I believe we will have this tier throughout the entire season. As we get more games, get more data, this will probably look a little bit different. Again, not going in a rankings order, but we'll just start with Georgia because they are, we believe, the best team in college football. They dragged Clemson, top 15 team. Not a lot to unpack there. If you saw the game, you saw the game. If you saw the second half, you were like, oh, they really adjusted to what Clemson did in that first half defensively. Georgia's running the football. Clemson's doing a great job of selling out to stop the run. Mike Bobo says, you know what? We got the best quarterback in America. Let's put the ball in the perimeter. Let's let our special players be special. And then they end up scoring 34 points. It is what it is. Ohio State, no surprise. They are in the playoff penthouse tier. They throttled Akron 52-6. Jeremiah Smith, someone check his birth certificate. He is a grown man playing football. I want to see them against some better competition here and see how that new offense looks with Chip Kelly running the show and Will Howard pulling the trigger. Will Howard threw 3 touchdowns. I get it's Akron, but you don't apologize for a win and you don't apologize for scoring 50 points. They won't play anyone with a pulse until they go to Michigan State, and even then we'll see what they are. But again, it's on the road, so Ohio State, without question, in the playoff penthouse. Would be wildly surprised if we get to the end of this thing and they're not in the college football playoff. Texas, they slammed Colorado State. Quinn Ewers throwing no-look passes, looking like he's Pat Mahomes out there. Got to win this week against Michigan. Have to win this week against Michigan. That game will obviously shake up these tiers with the rest of their schedule in the SEC too. Remember, they have Georgia come to them October 19th, so that'll be another game that you got to circle if you're Texas. Right now, though, feel pretty good about them being in this playoff penthouse and feel pretty good about them being at the end of this thing in the college football playoff. Now, Miami is not a team that I think a lot of people would have put in the playoff penthouse at this point in time. Maybe you put them in the bubble watch. Maybe you put them on the outside looking in. Miami, looking at the rest of their schedule, man, who is beating them after what they just did to Florida? I get it's Florida, but Cam Ward put on a show and a half, had his pulse at resting heart rate level in one of the most difficult places to play in all of college football, threw for darn near 400 yards, threw a pick, shrugged it off, and kept on balling. That dude has got something special upstairs. That roster, I believe, is now at the level Mario Cristobal envisioned it would be when he took that job. Going back to their schedule, no Clemson this year. That Florida State game looks very, very winnable. Who's beating them? And even if they do catch a loss somewhere, is anybody really taking the ACC from them? It's week 1. I don't want to overreact. However, Miami, they look like a force of nature. Ole Miss, again, we're not going in just like rankings order, so if your team you think should be mentioned earlier in this conversation, it's just what I got written down, all right? So let's not be too upset about that. Again, our rankings are already on the YouTube channel, so go subscribe and check that out. Ole Miss dropped 76 on Furman. Jackson Dart put up road to glory numbers. Not a whole lot to unpack here. They looked how they're supposed to look. All right, now they still have games at LSU. They got Georgia, but you look at the path here. No Texas, no Bama. Lane Kiffin has built those trenches to be like SEC championship caliber now. It's not just me saying that. Nick Saban said the same thing on College Game Day, and our eyes have said the same thing through one game against Furman. Ole Miss, again, would be surprised if they're not in the playoff when it's all said and done. Speaking of Saban and Bama, man, Alabama, they left no question in that game against Western Kentucky in the Fighting Neck Breaks. 63-0. All right, Jalen Milroe looking how you would hope he would look in that Kalen DeBoer offense. Did ridiculous numbers like Goodwill Hunting. Ryan Williams now, that true freshman wide receiver for them, keep an eye on him because you talk about Jeremy Bernard, talk about Law, like they got some dudes now to throw the football to. If Ryan Williams continues to elevate the way that he looked in that game against Western Kentucky, I get it's WKU. All right, I'm not trying to put too much into one game, but seeing him have 2 touchdowns on 2 catches, is that good? Are bonita fish big? Yeah, that's real good. So watch how he elevates, watch how he comes along, having another matchup nightmare in that offense for Jalen Milroe to deal the pill to. Could be problems. Going to learn a lot September 28th when Georgia rolls into town. But again, regardless, I think they're a college football playoff team as we sit here after week 1, whatever that's worth. Now for Utah, man, all Cam Rising does is win the conference. The reason why I have Utah in the playoff penthouse, this is essentially my prediction for Utah to win the Big 12. Spoiler alert, I do not see more than one Big 12 team getting into the college football playoff. All he does is win the conference. Now, they have a tricky stretch, a very telling stretch. They go to Oklahoma State, and then they host Arizona in back-to-back weeks. That, to me, will decide what Utah's postseason is going to look like when it comes to playing in the Big 12 title game. But it is what it is. Utah, they're rolling. I like them a lot. Saw what I saw against Southern Utah. Take what you want from that one. But Utah, yeah, I think they're a playoff team. Notre Dame, huh? The Fighting Irish went into College Station. They were underdogs. And I said it in the opening, man. We talked about what was real and not real about that team, dude. Like, that's a mature team. That is a team full of adults. That is a team that knows who they are. That is a team that is confident and comfortable in their own skin. That is a team that plays well now in all 3 phases. The offense is going to come along. I'm not overly concerned about that just yet. I will say how well the offense plays will ultimately, I think, dictate their ability to win a national title or not. They got some pieces. I love Jeremiah Love. It was very cool to see him call game blouses in the game against Texas A&M. We love that. I think he's a weapon for them all year long. Bo Collins is a 50-50 nightmare, the transfer receiver from Clemson. As they progress offensively, that defense is going to be more than fine. Like, that defense, I think, is good enough to keep them in a street fight against anybody, and I feel very confident saying that. It's essentially 7 graduate students and then one of the best, if not the best, corner in college football in Benjamin Morrison. So, yeah, they're going to be more than fine. And then also I'll say this, too. You can tell a lot about a football team by how they do special teams. Marty Biaggi is the special teams coordinator for the Irish. Consistently one of the best special team units in America. Special teams, again, you can tell how much a team cares by how they do their special teams. And Notre Dame, yet again, will be phenomenal on special teams. So Notre Dame, again, looking at their schedule, man, I don't see a bunch of games that concern me. The USC game gets a little bit more intriguing because of how they played against LSU. But looking at their path, Louisville will be a revenge game. I think they'll win that one. Florida State looks a lot more winnable right now based on how they've started the year. It's tough for the Noles just catching strays throughout this show. Notre Dame, like them a lot, put them in the playoff penthouse. Now, when it comes to Oregon, man, I have them in the playoff penthouse. And we will have a full-on discussion about this a little bit later. I touched on it in the open. We feel very confident and very strong about this. If you're selling stock to me, I'm buying it. I'm stockpiling all the Oregon stock I can find right now. It was week 1. Let's relax. I still think they're one of the best rosters in college football. I still trust Dan Lanning. Again, more on the Ducks a little bit later in this show. But right now, it's very difficult for me to put Oregon outside of this playoff penthouse. And we'll have a full-on discussion about that a little bit later in the show. So that's the playoff penthouse for you, man. Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, Miami, Ole Miss, Alabama, Utah, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, and much to the chagrin of the social media crowd, the Oregon Ducks just got their feet kicked up on the ottoman, maybe on the sectional in the old playoff penthouse. That's not in order. That's not, the rankings we have right there, but those are the teams that I believe are college football playoff teams and feel really good about through 1 week of the season. So let's move on to this next tier. And this is where it gets a little bit more intriguing. Quick shout out to Ari Wasserman. Just came over to On3. Andy and Ari every single weekday morning right here on the On3 YouTube channel. I'm telling you, that is worth the free $99 of subscribing to this channel in itself. He put out an article that's really good talking through Bubble Watch. And if you haven't read that yet, it's on on3.com. Go check it out. Ari Wasserman has been an absolute force for us since getting over to On3, so that's huge. Here are the teams that I would put into what I call the tier of Bubble Central. All right? Not a bad place to be this time of year. Weather's still pretty good. Decent cost of living out there. Bubble Central's not the worst place to be. However, it's not somewhere you really want to stay. Bubble Central is kind of like apartment living. It's great for your stage of life. At some point in time, though, you kind of want to elevate and get to that next spot, get some more space. These are teams that can very much so still play their way into the college football playoff. So if you're in Bubble Central, do not be upset about it. Tennessee, I think they're a college football playoff team when it's all said and done. However, they have a great test this week against NC State, and then they're at Oklahoma September 21st. Here is the path if you're Tennessee. Like, obviously, there's a lot to say about, well, Nico's got to do this, and the defense has to do that, and the weapons. Like, we've hit all those points over the head, just ad nauseum. So if you want to know as a Tennessee fan, hey, what's it going to take, JD? Give me just the wins and losses we need to be a college football playoff team. Here it is. Get to Alabama undefeated. Okay? You say, okay, I can do that. Check. Let's go. Get to Georgia with 1 loss. All right? So you host Alabama in Neyland. 2022 vibes for the folks dialed in. Just get to that game undefeated. Just get to that game undefeated, okay? So that obviously means you have to beat NC State, got to beat Oklahoma, handle business, get to that game undefeated against Alabama. Then go to Athens with 1 loss. So notice, I didn't say you have to beat Alabama. I just said you have to get to Georgia with 1 loss. All right? So that means the game against Kentucky. Got to make sure you're locked in for that one. Mark Stoops and the boys kind of sneaky. If you do that, 10-2 as an SEC football team will get you into the college football playoff. So right now, I'll put Tennessee on the bubble because I want to see more from Nico against better competition, but I feel good about the Vols. Go ahead and put them in Bubble Central, probably on a month-to-month lease if I had to guess. Maybe week-to-week lease if I had to guess. Penn State, the good folks over there on our Penn State On3 forum were very active in our conversation around me eating crow for my West Virginia picks. We appreciate you for that. I love Penn State from what I saw from them offensively. I want to see more, okay? I want to see a little bit. I want to see sustained success offensively. What I can't get out of my mind is that drive at the end of the first half where Drew Aller drops back, throws a laser downfield. First of all, there was very little time left in the first half, so having an OC to say, nope, let's push it. Like, we're not taking a knee for anything, baby. Let's use this bullet here. I love that from Coach Koltanecki. I also love him describing the offense in ice cream metaphorical terms as it's vanilla. It's what you've always known, except we're mixing in some toppings to kind of make it a little bit more complex. It's a great conversation. Go check out his press conference from the West Virginia game. I want to see what they look. So going back to what I just said, I was all over the place there. Seeing them push the ball downfield and have an explosive element at the end of the first half against West Virginia made me feel like, okay, this is a new Penn State. And yes, it was a push-off. We're not here to talk about that. It is what it is. You got it done if you're Penn State, okay? That was a big drive. Also, the laser to catch it in the back of the end zone. The play after, that was massive. I want to see what they look like at USC October 12th. Just got a little more interesting. The game against Ohio State, where they come to Happy Valley, will obviously be the one that all Penn State fans have circled. I like where they're at. I want to see more, but Penn State, I think, has every chance to be in the college football playoff if they continue to have this kind of success throwing the football and being explosive. Because the defense is what it is. The running back room is what it is. Can they have the explosivity offensively is the question we're all asking. We saw it against West Virginia. I want to see more before I take them off the bubble. Now, I have Michigan right here in Bubble Central. If you're a Michigan fan, you're like, hey, We just won the national championship. Who are you putting on the bubble? I hear you. I understand. I'm not pushing back against what you have in that locker room. All I'm saying is the Fresno State game left something to be desired. I have made my pick in the Texas-Michigan game. I got Texas winning that one. If Michigan wins that game, they are writing a letter to the landlord of Bubble Central and saying, hey, we no longer live here. Thank you so much. We'll be moving into the playoff penthouse. Because really, I mean, if you beat Texas, there's the game against Oregon, and there's the game against Ohio State. I think a 10-2 Michigan with that kind of a resume, if they have a loss to Oregon and Ohio State, which there's nobody saying they have to lose those games, just so we're all on the same page, that would be good enough to be in the college football playoff. So Michigan right now, if you want to find your way into the college football playoff penthouse and move out of Bubble Central, I need to see against Texas that the trenches are still what we've believed they are the entirety of this offseason. I also need to see a little change-up pitch, okay? Davis Warren getting the wing loose. I think they were very vanilla offensively against Fresno State. If they have some more juice in this game, that would, I think, change a lot of people's mind around what they have out there in Ann Arbor. Now, how about USC, man? USC, little Bubble Central action for the folks out there in Los Angeles. USC fans should be thinking college football playoff. Like, I have them in this category right now because we're one game into the season. But, like, if that's going to be the defense we see from them week in and week out, if that's going to be the attitude we see from them from a physical approach and the tackling we see from them, like, USC offensively with Miller, Moxie, Moss, I love what they're bringing to the table, baby. I absolutely love it. And I said this, too, about Miller Moss in our reaction to the game. What he has right now, like his story and his edge, and honestly, even seeing the way that he carried himself post-game with the emotion and the fire, like you could just tell that was the entire time he's been at USC, all culminating in that moment. And you think about USC and you kind of think about like the golden boy vibe, the golden program kind of vibe. That's not this USC team. This is a USC team that feels like they've kind of been dragged through the mud over the course of the last, let's call it the offseason, really the last couple of years with how people talk about them being soft, being that West Coast team. Like, I didn't see that against LSU. Now, their path is still going to be tricky. Got to go to Michigan, play Penn State. Nebraska's kind of sneaky. Wisconsin's kind of sneaky. But then you have Notre Dame. There's a path there. 10-2 USC, I think, should feel real good about their chances to be in the college football playoff, in large part because you beat LSU. It's a nice bargaining chip, if you will, when it comes to Selection Sunday. Missouri, they're on the bubble for me right now. I don't know who they are yet. I like the pieces. I like Mr. Brady, let him cook. I like Luther Burden. I love Eli Drinkwitz. Now, I will say this. They play Boston College and Vanderbilt before the end of September. Think about how differently we view those two games than we did a few weeks ago. Vandy beating Vatech. Boston College, I think, just scored again against Florida State. Dang, Florida State fans, I'm sorry. Catching a lot of strays this show. It's not intentional. I mean, we'll see. We'll see. Those will be, I think, better tests than we had assumed. But overall, Missouri, when they go, I believe they go to Texas A&M. Yeah, to Texas A&M after Vandy. That'll be a really good test, too, and kind of have a better gauge for what they are. Because say what you want about A&M against Notre Dame, that defense was something to behold. That'll be a real good test. But overall, definitely still have a chance to be in the college football playoff, as does every team we're talking about right now, living in Bubble Central. Now, Oklahoma State, them being in this category right now, is essentially me telling you I think they're the second best team in the Big 12. Okay, through 1 week, they're going to get to settle on the field. Ollie Gordon looked good in the opener. I think if you're an Oklahoma State fan, you're saying, okay, hey, what do we do to be on the bubble? Like, we're want to know. What are you talking about? I think September 21st, when you go to Rice-Eccles, and then you turn around September 28th, and it's Kansas State, like, that's going to tell us a whole lot about who Oklahoma State is. So the end of September now is going to give us a very good gauge for who's coming out of that conference. Not saying it decides it, but it'll give us a very good gauge for where they're going to be in terms of like a lot of those big powers in the Big 12 playing each other. So that's why I have them on the bubble, but it's definitely still, obviously, as all these are, subject to change. So again, Tennessee, Penn State, Michigan, USC, Missouri, Oklahoma State, for me right now, all living in Bubble Central with a lease that is week to week, and we'll see if they move into the penthouse this time next week. Now, here's the Here's the tier that is not, unfortunate to be in by any stretch of the imagination. I think there's a lot of teams that wish they were in this tier, but here's the teams that I'm going to put right now as the waitlist tier for the college football playoff. Again, doesn't mean you're out. Whenever you get waitlisted to a school, you kind of have a decision to make. Okay, do I want to try and, wait it out and see if I can eventually get in here, or do I want to do something else? For these teams, these are the schools that I think could eventually find their way into the college football playoff, but I need to see a little extra juice. And Clemson's the team that I probably look at first in this group. The loss to Georgia, it's Georgia. That's not me throwing shade at Clemson. It's not me throwing shade at what Dabo's done there. People were jumping to the Twitter sphere and saying, this is why you got to go to the portal. I'm like, brother, it doesn't matter if they went to the portal. That Georgia football team is doing what they did to Clemson to a lot of other teams, regardless of who they drew week one. Clemson just happened to be the team in Atlanta. They're 0-1. No Miami. That Florida State game looks much more winnable. They play NC State, which will be a good test. They get them off of a bye. So I think that's huge. They got to score to win the ACC. You don't want to find yourself on Selection Sunday hoping and praying you find your way in backdoor with the at-large bid. We've seen that's not really a path to success in the college football playoff historically. Definitely not in the 12-team playoff. But if you can win the ACC, you probably have to outscore Miami. I need to see something from Cade Klubnik. I'm not overwhelmingly concerned about the Georgia game because, again, it's Georgia, but we need to see something from Cade Klubnik. Now, LSU is the next team I would put in this category. And it's not so much, I don't think, the loss to USC that puts them on the bubble to me. Obviously, you wanted to win that game, and that would have probably put you in a different category here. The reason why they're waitlisted to me, instead of on the bubble rather, is the path ahead to them. They can't lose two or more of these. They can't lose two or more. They have Ole Miss, they're at A&M, they got Alabama, they got Oklahoma. I'm not saying they can't do it, but you put yourself behind the sticks a little bit in terms of trying to make the college football playoff. I trust Brian Kelly. I think Garrett Nussmeier is going to prove himself to be one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC. I love Kyron Lacey. I think he might be one of the best receivers in the SEC. But at the end of the day, losing to USC and losing one of your mulligans to make the college football playoff, I don't think 9-3 gets you in. I don't. So can LSU get to 10-2? If they can, that obviously would put them into the college football playoff in my mind. But we'll see if that's as obvious as I believe it to be. One more Big 12 team for us here, Kansas State. Again, this is me telling you I think they're the third best team in the Big 12. You could put Arizona here. I think you can make an argument for other teams in this discussion as well. One team gets in from the Big 12 is my feel for it. The reason why I have Kansas State behind an Oklahoma State and a Utah, I love the veteran nature of both of those operations. And now Kansas State, they're veteran on the defensive side of the football. They bring back 80% production from last year's unit. However, new quarterback. Really talented quarterback in Avery Johnson, but new quarterback. I believe they're somewhere south of 40% production back on that side of the football. Now, I love Dylan Edwards. I love the run game overall for them, but I'm going to wait and see a little bit on Kansas State before I move them to any other tiers. Now, the thing for Kansas State is they get Arizona and Kansas State at home. They do not have to play Utah. So if Kansas State plays Utah, it'll be for a playoff spot in Jerry World. So we'll see what happens there. But those are the teams that I have waitlisted right now for the college football playoff. Clemson, LSU, and Kansas State as we sit here after week one. Now, those are the tiers. And those are your teams that are kind of sweating it out and hoping they can find a way to win their conference and make the college football playoff. Then you got the G5 out there on Grove Street. In the words of Waka Flocka, it's a party, it's a party, it's a party. Here's the teams we got to keep an eye on in the G5. All right, these are the 12 seed watch, if you will. Our guy Caden Smith jumping in here periodically and breaking down what's going on in the world of the G5. App State is my preseason pick to make the college football playoff, win the Fun Belt. No reason to change it right now. Beat the brakes off East Tennessee State. Hey, big one this week. Big one this week. You got to go to Clemson, South Carolina. Find a way to get it done. That doesn't punch your ticket to the college football playoff, but I tell you what, man, when all those suits on the college football playoff selection committee are sitting back looking at resumes and trying to get a gauge for, hey, who should we put in from the G5? Oh, wait, hey, App State, they found a way to beat Clemson at Clemson? That would go a long way. I'll leave it at that. Boise State, Ashton Jeanty, 6 touchdowns. Put himself on a lot of folks' Heisman radar, the running back for Boise State. Now, I love that. I love that you have something like that at running back to be able to generate that much offense. A little bit concerned that we got to go ahead and score 56 to beat Georgia Southern. It is what it is. Boise State preseason had the best odds to make the college football playoff from the G5 ranks. A win's a win. Big one this week against Oregon. Right? Got to go to Eugene. It'll be rocking. But if you're Boise State, you're watching what a team within your state did to them last week. Kind of made it closer than the folks out there at Oregon would like. I'm just saying, keep an eye on Boise State. But this is a chance for them to make a statement. Kind of a gut check, if you will, for App State and Boise State with two massive Power 4 conference opponents on the docket this week. Now, UNLV, speaking of Power 4 conference opponents, they went out and took it to a Big 12 team in Houston. The Fighting Barry Odoms beat them 27-7. They're at Kansas here pretty soon, all right? So keep an eye on UNLV. That game against Kansas is one you circle. But UNLV now, they're starting to generate some noise. It's only week 1, but keep an eye on UNLV and what they're doing out there in Nevada. Liberty had the best odds preseason of anybody. Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama Tech, they had the best odds of anybody to be undefeated at the end of the college football season. They beat Campbell this past week. We'll see. That game that I have circled for them, they got to go to App State September 28th. That will have a very playoff-esque vibe to it. All right, we'll see if they can get it done there, but we say it a lot. You got a quarterback, you got a chance. Caden Salter could have played a lot of other places, I believe. This past portal cycle probably had some options to go play somewhere else. Don't know that, but I believe that. He might be the difference for them in making the college football playoff. But for right now, the G5 party to keep an eye on. Who's got the music blaring the most? App State, Boise State, UNLV, and Liberty are all on my radar as of right now. And that's a thing, too, man. If you're a college football fan, this year, it used to be like, oh, cool, who's ending up in that New Year's Six Bowl game? That's kind of fun. Good for them. Watch them go get boat raced by Oregon. One of those teams now is going to, maybe not one of those 4 that I just mentioned, but some team from G5 party world will find their way into the college football playoff, and there's a chance they play your favorite team. Or maybe your favorite team is a G5 team. Regardless, they're going to factor into the college football playoff discussion this year. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. If you're watching live, make sure you're subscribed. Got a good crowd, man. We're glad to have y'all here. If you're new, college football, nothing but college football. Just college football, sicko community on this channel, on this show, The Hard Count, so we appreciate you for being dialed in. Let's talk about Oregon a little bit, because Oregon played Idaho a lot closer than I think anybody expected. Or Idaho played Oregon a lot closer than anybody expected. Final score was 24-14. I tell you what, I have been on the front of the Oregon hype train here this past offseason. I'm fine with saying that. I think they're going to win the Big Ten. I think they're going to find their way to play in the national championship game. And then when they were having a close game, I got people in my mentions saying, what's up with Oregon? Hey, Oregon doesn't look that good. Hey, are you ready to eat your words about Oregon yet? And I'm like, hang on just a second. We're already selling our stock on Oregon? We're just overreacting and just shipping Oregon down the river? Are we sure we want to do that? Okay, because what I saw in that game against Idaho was, quite frankly, a lack of complementary football. JD, you're not worried about them playing 10 points with an FCS team? Doesn't look good. Tell you that right now. If they play that way against better competition, they will get beat. That's 100% true. But in week 1, with the way they looked, which is the key thing here, not the box score, the way they looked, no, I don't have a ton of issues with them finding a way to win a football game. Yes, lesser competition. Again, you've heard me say that many times. That would have been a loss somewhere else. But I didn't see anything that's concerning that's going to follow them, from what I can tell, throughout the course of this season. So here's what would have been concerning. If the quarterback play had just been a swing and a miss. Like, you go out there and Dylan Gabriel, it becomes very obvious very early, like, hey, kid doesn't have it. Maybe it worked for him at Oklahoma. This is not the system for him. He doesn't get it. He's making bad decisions. He's throwing multiple picks. Let's read his stat line really quick. 41 of 49. 380 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Yeah, but JD, he was just checking it down. Didn't Bo Nix just check it down all the way to being a first-round pick? And check it down all the way for them making the Pac-12 title game? That's what this offense is. They're not going to be this team that airs it out. What you see is what you get from this offense, man. They're going to check it down, put it to playmakers in space, make good decisions, and we're off to the races. It's not going to be this aerial assault. That's who they are. So, no, I'm not worried about the quarterback play. If I had been worried about the quarterback play, that changes this discussion. The trenches, man, were they getting pushed around? It's like that shows up pretty early, too. We all thought we knew who Florida State was. Gosh dang, Florida State, I apologize. We're not trying to deal out strays here, but like it's a teaching moment for all of us, all right? We're all learning together, okay? We'll move forward. If they were getting blown off the ball, that changes the conversation, okay? Like, hey, maybe those dudes up front that we thought we had, we don't really have. Jordan James had almost 100 yards on the day. On 15 carries, had 95 yards, 6.3 yards a carry. Yeah, that'll do just fine. That'll be more than fine. Well, did they get pushed around running the football? No. They allowed less than 50 yards on the ground. Okay, so we're not worried about the trenches just yet. I don't see anything to write home about when it comes to the big boys up front. Again, didn't play well enough against better competition. That probably would have been a loss, but I'm not retracting anything I said about Oregon over the course of this past offseason. What do you say, JD? The defense, they allowed some big plays, right? Yeah, well, they also allowed 14 points. And I would say this too. Idaho, if you go back and watch that game and don't just like scout the box score, they scored on some trick plays. And that's not me taking anything away from Idaho, but I think when you talk about what it's going to take to beat Oregon, you're going to have to play them straight up. Like Idaho knew they had to bring in a few firework plays. They had to have a few in the chamber there if they were going to have a chance in this game. And credit Idaho, man, they absolutely did. Like they, I hope, are a force in FCS throughout the course of this season. However, again, I'm not overly concerned that a couple of trick plays hit and Oregon had 2 touchdowns scored against them. So what I think you saw, again, going back to what I said, what the issue at Oregon was, from what I could tell, was a lack of complementary football. Like you were not able to string together good defensive series, good offensive series that you see these teams string together to allow them to pull away. Is that something to pound the alarm about? It is if it continues, but in game 1 in week 1, when it's Dylan Gabriel's first start, Evan Stewart's first start, no, I'm not overwhelmingly concerned. Here's what I would say too. In some ways, in a very, very weird, twisted way, I think Dan Lanning is going to make his team better from this. And you heard him post-game say all the right things, but there was one question specifically that someone asked him that I thought was kind of revealing. They said, hey, what'd you say to your team in the locker room? He said, that's between me and the team. If I wanted y'all to know, I'd have you guys in there. And, of course, it's like you read that from a transcript. It's like, oh, that makes sense. But the way that he said it, you could tell Dan Lanning's like, I sent a message, is what I would have to assume was said behind closed doors. I have to imagine Dan Lanning was not pleased with that. And Nick Saban said something on game day. He's just been dropping gems on game day, by the way. He said something on game day. He said, your teams listen to you actually better when you don't play well as opposed to when you play well. And Dan Lanning being from the Kirby Smart, Nick Saban tree, I have to believe he now is going to use that lack of success execution-wise from this past game, put the pressure on his team, raise the standard for his team. I don't think we'll see them play that poorly again throughout the course of this season. I could be wrong, but Will Compton said it during our conversation. Boise State's a good football team, but with Oregon having the dip in production last week, I would buy the dip here. To quote our good friend Josh Newberg, I would buy the dip here with Oregon, and I think they'll be able to kind of turn it on. Because last week, let's be real, they played 4 minutes of the kind of football we expect from them throughout the course of this season, pulled away. Now, you don't ever want to have an on and off switch as a football program. That's the obvious part here. You wish it didn't take that kind of effort to win the game. But at the end of the day, the other advantage for Oregon here is their schedule. Y'all, they play Ohio State. That's going to be huge. In Autzen, they don't play them until October. They got to go to Michigan. Massive one, defending national champs on the road. It'll be cold. Again, it's in November. So what does that mean? It means that Oregon ultimately, even though week 1 didn't look great, they have time to put this thing together to ultimately be the machine they need to be when it's time to play their best football. So going back to Dan Lanning being from that Kirby and Saban tree, what do we know about those teams? They always play their best football later in the year. I think this team will be the same. Now, it wasn't the case last year in the conference title game. That's 100% true, but I think that this team, with the roster talent they have, with who they have as head coach, with how he operates, I'm not worried about Oregon. And I'll say it again. If you are selling Oregon stock, please DM me. I'm happy to buy it, and I'm happy to just hoard all of it like the HGTV show Hoarders, and just keep it all for myself until it comes time to cash that in I guess that'll be late December, early January. Regardless, no issues with Oregon right now. And if you do, your prerogative, but we disagree. Hey, appreciate y'all being dialed in, man. This is so awesome. College football season is here, man. Like, we're not talking about it eventually getting here, it being on the horizon. Like, it's here. We're talking about week 2. What a beautiful thing. What a beautiful thing that is. If you have not yet subscribed, now is the time. If you're more of a podcast person, dial in on the podcast. Y'all have been crushing the podcast numbers for us, and we appreciate you for that. New podcast product out there for you as well for Sunday morning, so dial in there. But hey, for Nick Brake producing the show, for myself, JD Piquel, very, very grateful for y'all. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. Back on the air, same time tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern. Sprint through the line for a big last live show of the week on Thursday. We love y'all. We appreciate y'all. Going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time.